Okay, now we have arrived at the best practices. These are some, let's say, practices or elements that we find really helps to give our companies the best opportunity to achieve success. Not all are appropriate or applicable to all cases, but it's just something to think about. First one I wanted to discuss is the issue of, do I need a sales rep or not? This is the most common question that comes up, and sometimes companies are reluctant or hesitant to work with a local sales rep, but I'd like to address that first off. In the case of most of the companies that we work with, their products, it's practically unavoidable and necessary to work with a local sales representative. There's a couple of really important upsides about this. One is that these companies already know the market. If presuming you enter into a relationship with a qualified representative, they already know the market. They have relationships established to the end users and channels for selling. They have sales staff, presumably, and so there's knowledge and there's presence there that coming in from the outside you wouldn't have. Second important element of this is that somebody has to import your product into Mexico in order to sell it. And so this is a key role that these companies play. They import the product in order to be able to sell it in the market. And also, if your product has some type of particular regulatory compliance requirement, in most cases, the local sales representative will carry out the procedures with the government agencies in order to obtain the permits, registration, or whatever type of permission you need to be able to legally sell your product here. This is more important in the case of some types of products than others, like, as I mentioned, the ones that like medical or dietary supplements and things that go into the body or on the body, like cosmetics or something like that, or for livestock as well. Or chemicals and things that are, for whatever reason, require additional or extra regulatory compliance. And so a local sales rep is key in being able to obtain these permissions. But as folks, probably some of the folks on this call already are working with a partner in Mexico, you may have had the experience that it's not that easy to make that relationship work the way you would like. And communication is fundamental to that. There's no one easy solution to this, but just make an effort, we would suggest, to try and build the type of communication and trust to the degree that's possible, with your partner, because if not, there's frustration that can lead to distrust, and that is not a good basis for that type of relationship. It's happened many times where our clients in the United States will tell us, I like my business partner in Mexico. I think he's a good guy. I sent him a couple of emails. I didn't get any answer. So then I called him. We talked. It was very friendly. And when we got off the call, I wasn't sure what we had agreed to. That's the level of fuzziness that makes it difficult to make things work well. I would encourage you to try and do your best to overcome that and have more clear communications. And if necessary, you can ask us as well to assist. And we have assisted on a number of occasions in trying to clear out some of that fuzziness from these communication channels. On the next point, mention sales partner, national or regional. Mexico is a very large country with distinct industrial regions and regions that have different types of business activities in them, whether it be agriculture, mining, or whatever. And so it's unlikely in most circumstances that a national rep, one company that says, I'll cover the whole country for you, it's unusual that would be the best choice for you. You may want to go with a rep for Monterrey, a rep for Mexico City, and a rep for Guadalajara. That's common. Or maybe just choose a couple of regions and say, I'm going to have 2 reps, one in each one of these 2 regions. But if you have the type of product that perhaps is you're going to sell fewer units at a higher cost or something like that, and that the end users need to seek out the representative in Mexico, it may be possible to have a national one nationwide rep, but that would be on a case-by-case basis. And again, in our conversations before carrying out a project, we would talk about that. And I'll mention direct sales again in a moment. I included political context or established industrial vendor here just because it happens quite a bit in Mexico that some big business is driven by massive government contracts. And each time there's a change in government, either at the federal or state level, you have some of these companies that appear like a genie out of a bottle that all of a sudden are receiving these massive government contracts because they have personal relationships with people who are newly have access to power over this type of the assignment of these contracts. And they say, you know, we're going to make millions of bucks and we're going to sell a big thing. This is something that I mentioned because our clients have told us, a company from Mexico contacted me, say he wants to buy 1 million units, you know, of my product. This is legit. You know, this happens like in supplies for hospitals and things where you have the National Health Service, or in energy where you have the national oil company and things like that. We usually try to shy away from this type of relationship. It could potentially be a big sale for you, but it's not usually a solid, more long-term relationship because these companies disappear and appear like from one day to the next. So it's more solid, in our opinion, to work with a company that's more established, which we can investigate for you if you are interested in a particular company. They've been in the market for 20 years. They sell to John Deere and a few other, you know, well-known clients. So that gives you a feeling like these guys are not going to disappear from one day to the next. And finally, regarding direct sales, it's happened many times that a client company will come to us and say, I'm not crazy about working with a sales rep. I really would like to just sell direct from me to my customers in Mexico. It's unlikely that this will be a success, particularly if you have a type of product like, I don't know, air compressors or something like that, that you need to continually be moving product and selling to an expanding base of customers, because most of the customers in Mexico are going to tell you, I like your product, I'd like to buy it, but I'm only going to buy it here in Mexico because I make, you know, I'm a manufacturer of something, but I'm not an importer. So I'm not going to do all this complicated procedures to import the product. I just want to go to a local dealer in Guadalajara and buy it. And so that's what makes direct sales difficult, unless you make a type of machinery that costs $1 million a piece, and you're going to sell 1 or 2 or 3 in a year in Mexico. It may be possible for you to sell, if you're selling to Cemex or Bimbo or Pemex or one of these giant companies, they're already capable to do the importation and they're willing to do it. But that's, again, something you would need to look at on a case-by-case basis. And so those are things we talk about in our initial meetings when we work with you. Okay, here are some, this is something of a grab bag of various other things that we have just observed over time in our work with companies entering our market that we would like to mention, because these are things that come up. Number 1, availability of service and replacement parts is important. This is particularly in the case where you have a type of equipment or machinery that you're going to sell into the market, and it, you know, there are things that wear out, hoses and you know, parts that break down, and the user is going to need to obtain those somewhere. Now, it's best if they can obtain them from the dealer who is your sales representative in their local area, and the dealer either has the parts on hand or can easily get them from you as the manufacturer. We saw a big example of this when we worked with some Brazilian agricultural equipment manufacturers, and the dealers that we talked to told us, you know, our customers tell us they like the Brazilian equipment, it's good, but they're not going to continue buying it because every time they need a replacement, a washer or a hose or something like that, it takes months to get the replacement part from Brazil. So they were giving up on those Brazilian brands in order to, you know, probably return to a US brand where it was more easy to get the parts. So that's something that's very important to work with a local partner on, to make sure you have a plan in place for who's going to provide service and replacement parts. Number 2, trade shows are a great source of market intelligence and contacts. This is not news to anybody. Everybody does trade shows. Everybody knows what they're for. But I want to emphasize it because one important thing that we are discovering these days is that the idea of calling up companies and saying, hey, I would like to send you information about this product that's really great for your type of business, those days are practically gone now. First, because of the issues that we have had with, let's say, fraud or concern over unknown people calling up the companies began to reduce their accessibility to cold calling and sending emails. And then during the pandemic period, they really shut that down because people began to work from home. And so now if you can actually call a company on the phone, they'll tell you, oh, well, the person who handles that does work from home and I can't give you their contact information. So there's all kinds of ways that they set up these barriers. And so we find that now more than ever, even if you just walk the show, but it's particularly useful if you exhibit at the show, it's a tremendous opportunity to make personal contact with companies, because a lot of the folks, these production managers and stuff, are saying, I don't want people contacting me about great products for me. If I need a product, I'm going to go out and look for it. And that way I know that I'm driving my search for this product. And that's where trade shows play a big role. Next, product samples. How much is appropriate? We mentioned this because it's come up on a number of occasions where one of our customers or our clients in the US will tell us, I've been sort of negotiating with a potential business partner in Mexico, and he keeps asking for samples. So we started sending them, and he asked for more and more and more, and we still haven't come to an agreement, and he's not selling anything. And he told me that this is it's a normal business practice in Mexico, and that's part of Mexican business culture. Well, I want to mention that the answer to how much is appropriate is how much you feel is appropriate. You've been in business for a long time, you know how much samples you customarily send, and I would tell you that if it feels funny, then it probably is. Just stick with what you would normally do, because sometimes here in Mexico, there are some business people that would try to get a certain amount of advantage by playing the local business culture card and saying, oh, this is something we always do in Mexico. That may be true in certain circumstances, but in the case of the samples, I would give that a grain of salt and just go with what you customarily do, regardless of whether it's the Mexican market or the US market. Next, security. A hot topic for some people. You see images on TV of the narcos and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of scary. But what we tell people when they ask us, is it safe to travel to Mexico for business? We say, it depends what you do. If you carry out routine standard business activities, like you go to Monterrey or Mexico City or some city, you meet with your business partners or the potential customers during the day, you go out to lunch at a restaurant, you go out to dinner at a restaurant, or you have dinner in the hotel, or you have a drink in the hotel. That's pretty standard, and that is, I would say, as safe as it is anywhere else in the United States or Europe or wherever you go there. If you like to combine fun with your business trips and want to go out at night and hit the clubs and maybe meet new friends after midnight and things like that, that's where you get into the area where it's not safe. So if you're going out late at night and wandering around in neighborhoods, of course, that's unsafe. But if you stick to standard business activities, we, in our 25 years or so of carrying out these projects, we have never had a security-related incident, that would scare anyone of our companies traveling here to Mexico, because most of them stick to those types of practices. So that's what we have to say about security. Time zones, I throw this in because it's been driving me bananas over the past year trying to arrange teleconferences and virtual meetings. Mexico actually has 4 time zones. Most people don't realize that because most of the time you're just calling back and forth to Mexico City. But particularly in a couple of regions, if you are in the agricultural industry in Sinaloa and this portion of the Pacific Coast where you have a lot of commercial agriculture, they have a 1-hour difference time zone from Mexico City. And particularly if you are working in the Tijuana, Mexicali, inbound manufacturing maquiladora, corridor, they have a 2-hour time difference from Mexico City. And if for some reason you are in, let's say, the tourism industry and you are selling to hotels in Cancun and Playa del Carmen and places like that, they also have, I believe, 2-hour difference from Mexico City, might be 1 hour. But in any case, the rule of thumb on that is double check the time on the date of the call or the meeting or the travel or whatever that you're going to do, because Mexico has more time zones than people usually are aware of. Also, one more note on that, to make things even more impossible to comprehend, this year we will no longer be changing the time for spring and fall. Prior to this year, we did that. We had daylight savings time. But our current president has declared that we will now be working on God's time, which is apparently without daylight savings time. And so this year we will not be changing the time in the spring or the fall. So either take that into consideration, or if you really need to know what time it is, just send us an email and we'll be happy to tell you. And to wind up, I would like to mention that I don't know if anybody in the US follows our local politics too much, but we have a government currently that is takes quite a different approach than previous governments to industrial regulation, and let's say is not overtly business friendly, and that's had a certain degree of impact on some industries, particularly energy and also manufacturing in terms of access to electricity and things like that. And we are having a presidential election in 2024, and we presume that the current president will be departing and the new president will be coming in. So that may have some degree of impact on, let's say, the environment for investment or for manufacturing operations going forward. And so I just want to throw that out there so folks are aware there's going to be political campaigns. And I understand that also in the United States, there is an election in 2024, so much like you will be having a lot of discussion and campaign events and stuff. We will be having that here as well, and people are, getting quite worked up about that. So that's kind of a backdrop of what's happening here.